Our next speaker is Dr. Eran Lerman. He is the Vice President of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. He is Deputy Director for Foreign and International Affairs at the National Security Council in the Israeli Prime Minister office. He held a senior post in the IDF military intelligence for over 20 years. He also served for 8 years as a director of the Israel and Middle East office at the American Jewish Committee. He teaches in the Middle East study program at Shalem College in Jerusalem, and also in the postgraduate program in Tel-Aviv University and the National Defense College. He's an expert on Israel foreign relations and on the Middle East. A third generation Sabra, I am 7. He holds a PhD from the London School of Economics and a mid-career MPA from Harvard University. And his talk.
The Harvard debate is no longer that so much of a reason to be proud, but what can I do? Thanks very much to the Israel-Africa Institute, to Chaim Taib, to Ayman Mansour, and old colleagues of mine at the National Security Staff, and to Tel-Aviv University on behalf of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security for this event, but also for a partnership which I hope will continue to thrive. Unlike Josh, I'm not an expert on African affairs, but I can claim one spot of light in my life that has to do with the ability of idealistic young Israelis to make things happen in Africa, in the poor neighborhood of Namuwongo in Kampala. Many of the people there are refugees from the LRA war in the north. There has been for the last 17 years a kindergarten school which continues to thrive to my delight. And it was founded 17 years ago by two 18-year-old Israeli volunteers, one of whom was my daughter. So there's an African sentiment, and it will go forward. And I'm here to present a paper, essentially, that Nacima Keroud and I worked on regarding the potential cooperation of Israel and the Kingdom of Morocco in the African arena, and specifically in the areas of Africa which are of the main strategic interest to the Moroccan kingdom and to ourselves. It's in the context of a broader relationship between Israel and Morocco that, without going into all full details of history, rests upon a solid foundation that involves identity politics. Bear in mind that the Moroccan constitution of 2011 recognizes it's Arabic, it's Amazigh, it's African, it's European, but also its Hebraic traditions as foundational elements of the Moroccan identity and culture. And the counterpart to that is that in Israel you have a strong, vibrant, and I would say clearly still associated with the traditions of community, still associated with the traditions of Morocco, and proud of its identity, serving as an active bridge between the two countries. There's also the commonality of perspective today, two countries looking to promote growth, both internally and externally, relying on their extensive interaction with the international community, believing, as I think it was Keynes who once said, a rising tide would lift all boats. And thirdly, and frankly, as we all know, there has been a security relationship, arms supply, intelligence sharing, and so forth, decades before all of this, was essentially consolidated in the context of the Abraham Accords. But so based on this history of cooperation, which is now being tested, this is clearly not the best of times. The war has taken its toll on the relationship, but nevertheless, it has held, it continues to thrive, and at least at the level of discrete planning, looking forward, I believe that Israel and Morocco should cooperate in resisting some of the trends that we are seeing in parts of Africa, and laying the foundation for in many fields of mutual benefit to Israel, Morocco, and the African countries alike. Remember, we became partners facing common enemies. Actually, the very term strategic interests usually translates into having the same enemies. It was the Soviets and the Nasserites and the socialist nationalism in the Arab world in the 60s that brought Israel and Morocco together. Today it is, I would say, to use a phrase that I've recently come across, or a shorthand that I've come across, the crink. It's not the brick, because of course India, and of course depends who is the president of Brazil, are not necessarily like-minded. But if you look at China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea to be added, we are looking at something which begins to look like an axis, how should I say it, of evil, with intentions, actions, and purposes in Africa that we've already heard about to some extent, that are troublesome from an Israeli as well as a Moroccan perspective. We look at the involvement of mercenaries in the turmoil in the Sahel, if we look at Iranian subversion, if we look at the insidious patterns of Chinese, let's say, exploitative investment, all of these are issues of concern and of common concern. And from a Moroccan perspective, to the extent that I can reflect it here, there is a role for Morocco to play in Africa as a whole, specifically as a financial hub, and as a bridge, as a key bridge to Europe because of Morocco's location. Specifically, there is the implication, or there are the broader implications of the energy corridor to be built connecting Nigeria and Western African countries all the way to Morocco and beyond it to Europe, which means that the Morocco beyond Nigeria itself has interests in Ivory Coast, in Gambia and Senegal, in Mauritania and so on. And as I've already mentioned, the troubles brewing in many countries of the Sahel in the last few years, and even in the last month and weeks that we are witnessing, with a growing tendency by foreign powers to get involved. All of these generate these mutual interests. What can we do together? And when I say we, I mean, and you will understand this against the light of what I've said earlier, not just government to government, but also business to business, government to business, non-governmental organizations cooperating. And I was glad to hear from that Morocco will be the fourth location of an Israeli commercial office in Africa. It should be the base not only of Israeli Moroccan commerce, but also of joint action in West Africa as a whole, beyond the already existing office in Ghana. Israel and Morocco can do wonders cooperating on the field of water. From desalinization to reutilization. Israel leads the world in reutilization of water and has done so for decades now. I had the privilege of being witness in November 22 when Keroud signed a general agreement with its Moroccan equivalent in Marrakesh. Energy. Dr. Galili has already mentioned Israel's potential contribution in energy alternatives, solar energy, and other sources. Israel lagged behind for years, but now it has been catching up in this respect and has a lot to offer in this field. Again, jointly with Morocco, which is also very ambitious in its aims, as you've heard, in terms of reducing the reliance on hydrocarbons. As we've heard from Hungwe, Africa is ripe for a leap into technologies which would bridge its developmental gap in, for example, in information technology, communication technology, financial technology, which will enable people to avoid depressing visits at their banks, and all of that. And again, Morocco can be the partner and introducing agent of such changes which Israel can help promote. So there's a whole list, I would say, here of things that can be done together. Moreover, Israel can help generate, specifically in the United States, the necessary political backing, political support for an active Moroccan role in these transformations. And since we've already heard from Josh just how intensely our partners, peace partners and strategic partners at the UAE are now how deeply they are invested in Africa, the forum for cooperation between Israel, Morocco, the United States, and the relevant partners in the Gulf, specifically the UAE, Bahrain to some extent, as well as Egypt, should it wish to do so, already exists. It's the Negev Forum, which has been activated 2 years ago and needs to be revived once the current clouds clear. So there's much to be done. As I said, perhaps this is not the time for an overt show of partnership, and we can understand that this is the case, but this is certainly the time to start laying discreetly the foundations of a future of Israeli-Moroccan cooperation in Africa. Thank you.